We were raised by a single mother. When I was about 4 years old, our house burned down. Insurance didn't cover paying off that mortgage. So fortunately, my mom was a nurse and she was able to work a ridiculous amount of hours, some 80 hours a week, and pay off that mortgage while still finding us another place to live. So I've been fortunate to have a lot of really good role models in my life. Obviously, my mom being at the top of that list. Okay. When all is good, why rock the boat when my child support's low? Yes. I want her as well. We know who the style from.
She always very passionately said, I'm going to be an attorney. And she'd look at me with dead set eyes, and I 100% believed her. And not only just becoming an attorney, but actually being a good attorney that is going to make a difference. Erin's passion sets the bar for everyone else in our office. So we're at home on a Saturday night, it's 8 o'clock, Erin's phone starts buzzing. It says a lot of our staff who's feverishly working to prepare for the cases that we're going to handle that next week. They share Erin's passion, and it's contagious, and has been spreading through our firm.
All right, thanks for staying so late. All right, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye. I love doing family law. I feel like I really help people every day. I feel like we really make a difference for people, and I feel like families are benefited from the work we do. I started this firm with $2,500 in my bank account, and in the course of a year, I've helped over 200 families find a way to get through the turmoil that they're experiencing. I'm Erin Morse, and I'm here to help your family find your new normal.
The information provided on this live Q&A does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. Instead, all information, content, and materials available in this live Q&A are for general informational purposes only. Information on this live Q&A may not constitute the most up-to-date legal or other information. Viewers of this live Q&A should contact an attorney to obtain advice with respect to any particular legal issue. No listener, user, or browser of the site should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this live Q&A without first seeking legal advice from counsel in the relevant jurisdiction. Only an individual attorney can provide assurances that the information contained herein and your interpretation of it is applicable or appropriate to your particular situation. Use of and access to this live Q&A or any of the links or resources contained within the site does not create an attorney-client relation between the listener, user, or browser, a website, authors, contributors, contributing law firms, or committee members and their respective employers. The views expressed at or through this live Q&A are those of the individual inquirer and their individual capacities only, and the law office of Erin Morse. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this live Q&A are hereby expressly disclaimed. The content on this posting is provided as is. No representations are made. The content is error-free. Enjoy the show.
Live from the law office of Erin Morse Studios in beautiful downtown Orlando, it's Live with Erin Morse, the only live Q&A where you can ask your legal questions and have them answered live on the air. And now, Erin Morse.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's live Q&A with attorney Erin Morse. And let me just fix the little camera right here. All right, I am so sorry about that. We just had a quick technical issue, but we just fixed it right now. My name is Patricio, and tonight I actually have a co-host on this one. This is Alex, and if you If you remember us, we are from the side of chaos. Quick shameless plug. Sorry, Erin. And on top of that, we have, of course, Erin, which I'm going to bring in a few moments, but we also have a guest attorney on tonight's show who does work in criminal law, educational law, and what was the other one? I forgot.
And so I do personal injury and first party property insurance claims, whether it be because you got injured in an accident, or if you have an insurance claim for, let's say you own a home and something gets damaged, that claim gets.
Wow. If you heard him, he said a mouthful right there. We are joined today by attorney Erin Morse and attorney Michael Barber. How y'all doing tonight?
So good.
Doing amazing. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. I know we did this literally short last minute, and we almost had a big scare before you came on the show.
Yeah, I thought maybe I'd been exposed to COVID, and so a couple days ago, I literally got 5 texts and emails in one morning saying, "Hey, we've all tested positive. You might want to go get tested." So luckily, I could tell everyone here I went and got the test, and I got my results back. I am negative, so
Cheers.
we're all good. Cheers to that.
Cheers.
But a little bit of a close call there.
No, I had a little bit of a close call a few weeks ago. There was someone very close to me who was apparently who had it. So when they were told that, I'm like, can I get tested right now? Luckily, we were at the hospital when this was going on, and 2.5 hours later, I found out that I was negative. And it was a huge scare and a little bit of personal on my part. Thank you, everyone, for all the well wishes and the thoughts and prayers. My mom beat Corona.
Congratulations.
Round of applause.
Thank you. But let me just pull back on that one and focus more on the attorneys. Erin, how you been?
I'm good. Today was a pretty busy day. It was kind of chaotic.
I got to my desk at 4 o'clock.
I feel like I spent all day like working like this. More shit to do.
But,
Yeah, but it was a good day.
I mean, it was worth it. It was worth it because it's a huge case and there's a lot on the plate at bat for a player at bat, or what would be a good term to use on this one?
At the bar. At bar.
Yeah.
Hey.
But no, we're like I said, we're joined today by attorney Michael Barber, who does criminal, who also does educational, and then who also does
Personal injury.
Right.
And property insurance.
Property insurance. Thank you so much for coming on.
Very welcome.
These
Happy to be
summarized it
here.
more briefly than what he said.
I know.
We
Very
had
happy
all
to be
night.
here. Thanks for having me.
So Michael, let me ask you real quick. What got you to get into law? We covered this with Erin on our first episode. Since you're our guest, give us a quick rundown on how you got into it.
So I've always been interested in the law. I come from a family that's very involved. My father was a law enforcement officer, in fact, still is, 42 years and still going, although he will officially retire at the end of this month.
God bless
So-
him. I bet he was like, yo, I'm out.
Yeah, it's been quite a long
It's time to
career.
go.
He did 36 years, Winter Park Police Department, now another 6 at UCF. And
Oh, that's cool.
and then my mother worked at a law firm. It's a smaller firm in Winter Park, in Patino and Berman. Very high quality law firm that does a lot of real estate transactions, administrative law, and family law. And I started working there when I was a teenager in high school. I think I was maybe 15 when I started just going in and alphabetizing files.
You were
and,
the file
yeah,
clerk.
and then I moved up. Back then, you actually needed runners. Today, everything's electronically filed, but
Yeah.
you used to need young people with cars to physically take your filings and go to the courthouse and get it timestamped for you. And
did you have to be the person who assists the attorney when going to court, and you have to go down to the clerk, collect the file before the hearing, and bring it up to the judge?
yeah, I had to do that a couple times. Yeah, anything that had to do with getting things filed or picking things up from the clerk, and then eventually my duties expanded from there. Got into a lot of their billing and things like that, more administrative roles. And so I was very interested. I got to see these attorneys in action, their different areas of the law. And, I went to college here, UCF, go Knights. And when I was graduating in 2008, what else happened that year? Oh, yeah, the giant economic crash. So I really had to start thinking about, well, what am I going to do? There's no jobs out there, and I've always been interested in law. So, hey, why not take the LSAT and apply? And next thing you know, I'm graduating law school from UF Law, go Gators. And, now I'm about 9 years into my practice.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. And I knew you through a previous attorney that I worked for. A little cheers to Carlos Melendez on that one. He spoke very highly of you, and he would
Rightfully
And
so.
Carlos is a great guy. He would,
Yeah. He's saying anything about anyone.
And there were times where either one, there was a conflict or scheduling error or something like that, where he couldn't make it to a hearing on time, and he would always call me to like, hey, call Mike, see where he's at, see what's going on, or just run to the courthouse, see what's going on. And I'd always
run into you at the Osceola County Courthouse,
That's
and I'd be
right.
like, hey.
Were you just hanging
We
out
cover
there to, like,
this.
pick up
You know,
clients?
you're waiting for your own cases, and I'm the kind of guy where I think if you're already there, you should be volunteering to help out your friends and cover things, because at the end of the day, they're going to want to return the favor, and then all of us have a little more office time or a little more breathing room. We have to deal with emergencies. We know, well, I covered for all these people, so I know one of them will return the favor, reciprocate when the time comes. So I'm always happy to do it.
So we do have a couple of questions that came in through the texting service, the emails, and through the Facebook. And it's a little bit diverse today. So we have a little bit of family, a little bit of civil, and we have some criminal questions. And let's just dive
I mean,
right
we get those questions often, but we don't usually choose to answer them because I don't do that area of law, so I really can't adequately advise people.
Yeah.
So it's a couple of questions that were a little bit older that we pulled from like the archives, because we do hold on to them in case it becomes relevant, or there's something that comes up, or we have such an amazing person here to help us answer the questions. So I don't do that area of law, so I typically won't choose to answer those types of questions because I can't. I don't know.
Be like me answering family law questions.
Yeah, like what the hell?
So you guys ready to dive in?
Absolutely.
All right, let's go. The first question, Alex, you want to go and read that one out loud?
Me and my husband want to run away across country without any notice. What would happen to our children since they are minors?
The first half sounded so romantic.
I know. Okay, so first of all, are you bringing your children? I seem to think from this, the way this is phrased, that you're not going to bring your children. And also, what the fuck if you're not? There goes our booth.
Yeah.
If you're bringing your children and you want to run away from anyone and everything you can, you and your husband, you're in an intact marriage. There's no law on where you can live and where you can move while you're married. And nobody cares about what you do with your own children as you are in an intact marriage, right? If you're not adverse to the other person with any type of custody claim. So do your thing, live your life if you're bringing your children. If you're not bringing your children, I don't really want to talk to you.
Just make sure wherever you land that you actually get them registered in school so you don't face truancy laws. That'd be the only thing I would think.
Maybe
Get 'em in
not. What
school.
if y'all go to Costa Rica where there's no law on that? I
there
heard
you go.
that Pura Vida.
Pura Vida. I've been there. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Just give them a surfboard, and
So-
there's a whole other level of education to be had down there.
My son really likes that show with Zac Efron.
Down to earth.
Down to Earth.
There you go.
There he is. Speaking of the devil.
Hey.
Pop in right here. Go stand
We
in
got a
between.
cameo appearance.
Say hello.
Right there. Here's Scott.
Show him your mask. Mask is cool.
Scary.
Ooh, that is nice. That is nice.
There he is. So we were just watching one of the episodes where the children are there in Costa Rica, and they were talking about children and their education there, and it seemed as though they don't have quite the strict rules that they have here in the United States. So I recommend Costa Rica.
I've been there. It's beautiful. I'd recommend it for that reason as well.
I have not been there. I want to go. How was
Oh,
it?
you got a comment. Look at that. Connor comes in for 1 second.
Look,
he's already getting a comment.
Look at it. Says,
Hi,
hi,
handsome
handsome
boy."
boy. That's Jen. You know Jen.
Well, they could be talking about me in all fairness.
Yeah.
I'm kidding, obviously.
Everybody knew you were joking.
Thank you so much for the question. Let's jump into the next one. Where are we
Go play.
at?
Love you.
All right, Alex, go to read that one out loud.
Nice job.
What do I do if I haven't filed my taxes in 3 years, but I make $10K a month? They're wanting all my financials.
Do you do tax law?
I don't do tax law. I
Neither
would
do
tell you the
I.
fact that you haven't filed them in 10 years is,
I would say
3 years is problematic.
Call a tax attorney.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what you should do, and figure that out that way. Call a tax attorney and hire a good CPA, and you got some work to do, but I would not continue to fail to file your taxes.
Yeah,
Because that doesn't sound fun.
It does not. And I will say, after 3 years, you're at a very real risk. They may be coming after you with criminal charges, which are always going to be federal. Always going to be handled on the federal level, not the state level, assuming it's IRS income tax.
Right.
And-
Unless there's state income tax.
Yeah,
then
that
I
is
suppose you would have
possible.
state charges too.
Right. So in the state of Florida, we don't have a state income tax, but many states there are. For instance, like New York comes to mind, has a
Right.
high income tax, and either one could come after you. But I will tell you, if you don't pay the IRS, eventually they're going to come after you. That's one bill you always want to pay.
All right, thank you so much for the question. The next one coming up. Sure, I don't believe the next one. Here we go. Ooh, I think this one's for you, Mike. What the hell does it mean when someone says that possession is 9/10 of the law?
So that's kind of a euphemism we've all heard growing up. A saying I used to hear it all the time from, let's say my grandmother or something. You go to Tattletale because your sibling took your favorite toy. Legally, you're not going to find that written in a constitution or a statute anywhere. But it does kind of stand for the general proposition that someone who's in possession of property is generally in a better position to defend their rights to it. But that's a very general proposition. Every case is going to have its own unique facts.
But I thought possession is 9/10 of the law, meaning if there is a crime related to an object or drugs or the money or whatever, and you have possession of the object or the money, 9/10 of you is guilty.
Yeah,
that's
so
not what it means.
I will
That's
say
what my mom
this.
would always say, like, who stole my, I don't know, what would children steal? Who stole like the good?
The cookie from the cookie jar.
Yeah, right, and you have the cookie in your hand, not me.
Yes. Well, I will say this.
That's how my mom, possession 9/10 of the law, you're going to jail.
It works that way
Oh, no, the
sometimes.
case of Johnny versus Nabisco, I mean, that's a very
yes.
high-profile case, right?
We all cite to that.
Keebler versus Nabisco.
Yeah.
So I can tell you, in the state of Florida, for instance, there's not a statute that specifically says it's illegal to be in possession of stolen items. But there is a jury instruction that tells the jurors, it's law in the state of Florida that if someone is found to be in possession of recently stolen property, that gives rise to a presumption that they knew it was stolen or was involved in the theft.
That's
so there
the law.
it's a rebuttable presumption, but that comes up in criminal cases all the time.
Rebuttal to that statement right there.
Yes.
What if I were to what if I buy a speaker from a pawn
Guilty.
shop? If I buy a speaker from a pawn shop that was actually stolen, sold to a pawn shop, and now now it's in my possession.
Right.
Am I in possession of stolen property?
So the good thing about that is that pawn shops, by law, keep very, very strict records to the point that anyone who goes in to sell or pawn anything, one, they have to give a copy of their photo identification, and two, they actually give a fingerprint. So you're going to be able to tell them, hey, I got this from X, Y, and Z pawn shop. The police will be able to go back there, look at those records, and they'll be able to say, okay, so he did buy it from a pawn shop, but hey, that guy who pawned it, we should go ask him a couple questions because he may have stolen it.
Oh my God, that's so brilliant. I didn't know they did that. I didn't know.
They do, yeah.
Oh yeah, no.
I guess the ones that abide by the law do.
Yeah.
No, yeah, they're taking copies of your identification. They're getting your fingerprint and everything.
Yeah, and 99% of the time, I mean, every time I've ever seen, you're also in a surveillance video as well,
Oh, yeah.
unless it just happens to be broken at the time. So yes, pawning stolen property is not a good idea.
Faulty cameras? Oh, I've never heard of that.
Oh my God, it didn't save with the database.
Oh man, we just had them in a pile, but it's on fire. Oh my God. Spontaneous combustion.
I was smoking a cigarette while sitting at my desk, and suddenly the whole trash can's on fire. Whoops.
That's where I keep my
If it can happen to Joe Exotic, it can happen to your surveillance videos as well.
Oh man, Joe. We haven't talked about Joe in a while.
Oh, Joe.
It's been a little bit. I had to dig back 4 months ago to the beginning of the coronavirus.
You had to dig into your meme history.
Yes, back when things were still a little funny, and hey, this will be a fun adventure. I think we're all past that point now. But
We're actually.
Would you like to sit down? It's creepy. Your stance in the doorway.
No, we're actually using the hashtag Do It for Don Lewis for our Orlando Weekly campaign.
Nice.
So I
Who's
sent
Don
out-
Lewis?
Don Lewis was Carol Baskin's husband.
Yes.
Oh.
Oh yeah, so
By we, you mean you?
I was like, yeah, I've seen that. I just thought he was a friend. I thought we liked him.
Oh no, because the thing is, we tell everyone, you should vote for Side of Chaos for best local podcast for Orlando Weekly best of. Don Lewis would have loved, would have wanted it that way. Hashtag Do It for Don Lewis.
This is the way.
Nice. Way to throw Star Wars.
I know. I got to get in somewhere.
What did you say?
No,
This is the way.
Oh, very nice.
That's
very
what you need
nice.
to start hashtagging.
I know.
This is the way.
I think Don Lewis will carry over broadcasting back to Costa Rica where he is.
No, he's in a pile of.
He's in a septic tank.
Hey, right now.
Okay. You ready for the next question?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, let's do it. Go ahead.
Please help. I live in Clearwater, Florida. Clearwater, Florida. What are the laws for child support during pandemic? My ex has stopped.
The laws are that he needs to continue paying. However, the laws are that he has to continue paying. Period. So if we want to get into a new subject of how do I enforce it, how do I get my money, what do I do,
Back. There we go. Sorry about that.
So, sorry about that. A little technical difficulties. The bear was dancing. So what he's supposed to be paying. However, because of the pandemic, if you were to hold him in contempt, say, of non-payment of child support, which is your remedy in most instances, unless you're with the DOR. If you're with the DOR, God, I'm sorry, talk to them. I can't help you. Until you get them out of your case. But if we hold them in contempt, what the standard for contempt is that there was a court order that was clear. It was a clear and understandable court order, and likely a child support order will be found to be clear and understood, and that the person had the ability to comply, and that they willfully chose to not comply. So it would be willful non-compliance of a clear order. So if he continued to make money during this time, your contempt is in the bag. And he can get, he can get tagged with attorney's fees, he can get tagged with interest, he can get tagged with a number of ways that we can increase enforceability, including and up to some jail time. Now, jail time is going to be 1 or 2 days, and is jail time your best option because you can't pay if he loses his job, but it is a provision that we could utilize for the purpose of enforcement of child support. Now, that unpaid child support doesn't go away if you already have an order. Now, if he was paying child support and you don't have a court order, you are out of luck and you need to get one.
So follow-up question to that one, Michael, with basically the same concept, with that, with someone who's on probation and that has court order payments to make for the supervision, and they lost their job because of COVID, would they be filed with a violation of probation on that sense?
It's possible because when you're on probation, there are specific conditions where a judge will be like, in your case, these are the things I'm laying out that I think are appropriate conditions of probation. But then there are the general conditions that apply to everyone. And one of them is you will generally obey the law. And so if you have, I know it seems outrageous, right? Real extreme. So if you
we got a banner for that one, but keep going.
Yeah, so if you have a judge who is going to open up proceedings against you for criminal contempt of court and then actually finds you in criminal contempt of court, that could very well violate your probation. 100%. I don't see any reason why not. And then, of course,
I may or may not add that as a provision if I know they're on probation.
kind of dangle that above their head
I'm
like a sword of
we're
Damocles.
asking for criminal contempt.
Yeah.
And judges love criminal contempt for child support. They're like, these children don't cease to need to be supported because you cease to have the ability to pay.
I can see that. So yeah, that's something that would 100% absolutely be very concerning for anyone on probation. Make your child support payments because it could turn ugly if you don't.
So I think what he had was a question that kind of sprung up for me. For specifically the non-payment of the probation, aren't there payments tied to probation?
Right, there are, yes.
Okay, what if you didn't pay that amount of money during the pandemic because you lost your job?
Right, so that analysis is going to be the exact same analysis you just went over for non-payment of the child support. They're going to look at, was the order clear, and then they're going to look at, was the non-payment willful or not. And in that analysis, whether it's willful, they're going to look at whether you had the ability. Because if you can go and show, Judge, I lost my job, look, I've been applying, I've had all these interviews, then chances are you're going to be fine. They're going to find it was not willful, you were laid off because of the pandemic. But if you got, you kind of walked out because of frustration of your job because you weren't getting enough hours, and then you didn't apply for a new job, you can't show any effort to get employed again, then you're going to have a very big problem, whether it's non-payment of your probation fees or non-payment of child support, because you're going to have a harder time showing it wasn't willful, because the judges want to see effort. In either case, they're going to want to see effort on your part.
So the real thing that you need to think about is, based on the fact that current events equaled this pandemic, it's my suspicion that a lot of judges are going to go, everybody lost their job right now, right? Or their spouse lost their job and people can't pay bills or things like that. So I think right now is not the time. If they don't resume once we feel like we're on the other side of this pandemic, that's the time to give us a call. It's also worth mentioning what the cost of attorney's fees are for this motion for contempt. If there's not enough back support, that's, again, this is my favorite little phrase about this, is the juice worth the squeeze? Is it worth paying for an attorney to take this to court? Now, nothing says you can't do it yourself. These forms are available online. But they are from the government, they are from the Florida Supreme Court, and if you think that getting your assistance from the DMV is essentially what you think is the easiest way to handle things or the way that you will be the most proficient at it, I implore you to do so.
Thank you so much for the question. And the next one I'm going to direct to both of y'all. I want to see if I can what reaction we get from this question. Go ahead, Alex.
What do I do if my wife insists on speaking? If my wife insists on speaking in tongues in the presence of the kids.
Okay, so this is basically my show all the time, so I'm going to let you answer first.
Wow, so it's a little unusual. I mean, there's no crime that comes to mind. I mean, obviously, if a wife wants to speak in tongues in front of their kids, and what jumps to my mind as well.
What does it mean to speak in tongues? Is she a witch?
Right. So a few things come to mind. One is,
are you a racist?
Well,
question asker.
Well, there's religious connotations that come up with it. Obviously, you read in the Bible about people speaking in tongues. I know there are certain denominations of the Christian religion that are prolific in certain parts of America, where speaking in tongues is a regular part of their religious ceremony. So, I mean, legally speaking, I mean, I'm not sure as far as what I know about, criminal law, there's anything you could do about that. Family law, maybe, but I mean, what comes to mind is First Amendment freedom, religious freedom.
Yeah.
Freedom
of speech.
Right, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. That's an integral part of your religion. Or, it's not. Even if it's just a belief of yours, I really can't see courts infringing on that as far as from the perspective I bring with the practice areas that I am experienced in. I don't know as far as family law goes whether there's anything you guys could do, but for me, I think that's protected conduct, protected speech.
One of my favorite parts about having these questions is the fact that we have to unpack, and this is such a lawyer answer, right? Oh, I don't have my sign, but I have a little sign that says, Morse says it depends, right? It's somewhere.
Oh, are you kidding? Look at that.
All right, it depends, right? We have a little, so lawyers love
the
to
lawyer
say
answer to everything. Well, it depends.
Right? So it depends on what you mean by speaking in tongues. Are they Italian? Are they, what does tongues mean to you? Is she doing witchcraft? What does that mean to you? Okay. And then I want to unpack that and then set it aside, right? So he made a very good comment on religious freedom, freedom of speech, whatever. So I don't have to talk about that. I love it. What I want to talk about is speaking in front of your children, right? It sounds like you call her your wife. My assumption is only that you are in an intact marriage. I don't know if you're in the middle of a divorce. So in assuming that you're not in the middle of divorce because you're not my client and why would you go anywhere else? But if you're in an intact marriage and not going through a divorce, not soon to be divorced, it's not your ex-wife, there is no law on how to really raise your children short of neglect and abuse, which is a fairly high standard, higher than you actually think it is. I'm fairly certain, right? And her speaking in front of your children in some type of way is perfectly fine. I'm sure that there are plenty of people who, would criticize my parenting, right? Would criticize the fact that, my 8-year-old knows what a divorce is, what it means for a child to have two homes with mommy in one home and daddy in another home.
The ongoing joke is that, Connor could file our taxes.
Yeah, right? That he's 40 years old, right? He has a very mature outlook on life. Unfortunately, he was an infant when I was in law school, and by the time I graduated, because I went part-time, he was 3 years old. He was sitting next to me as I was watching bar prep videos. He used to ask me if I was going to watch the Weird Guys today, right? Because he found the bar prep guys weird.
Very weird.
Right? They are. But, he sat next to me playing with his cars and his trucks while I watched bar prep videos. So basically, he could pass the bar. He went through bar prep already. And, how many 3-year-olds can say that? I'm sure very few. So a lot of people may disagree with that he probably has been exposed to like all the areas of law in bar prep and like realities of that. Anyway, with that being said, there's no law on if you have your child sitting next to you and you speak in tongues and you teach them about divorce or you teach them about gay marriage as an acceptable absolute and that homosexuality is not only normal, accepted, it's actually perhaps a good thing for families, and that families get divorced and that's also okay. And further, this is something that we teach my son, that lawyers actually help people. When he was in class, this is a total tangent, but speaking about parenting and everybody having a unique perspective, he was at school one time and they were talking about what everybody's parents do for work and how you can be anything you want to be and everybody's careers and jobs and futures, you know, have a difference in what that looks like. And one time the teacher said, and Connor's mommy is a lawyer, right? And that was reference to it being okay.
Oh, that was
And my son immediately piped up and he's not generally a rude person and he behaves very well, but this one he had to correct. This is the story as the teacher told
rude,
it to
it's
me.
assertive.
You're right, because he's a man. If he were a woman, it would be rude, right? He was very assertive with this, and he went, my mommy helps people, and she helps families. She's not just a lawyer. That was like so important for him to say. Now, it's obviously what I want to teach him. I would love him to think of me as someone who helps people. I really do try to help people. But that's like really, an important lesson that we teach him, and it works.
I think, and going back to, like,
Sure, a lot
everything
of
she
people
said, going back to the question, I think a general thumb should be, get to know the person you're going to marry before you marry them. Find out what their beliefs are and what they're going to indoctrinate your children with. And then you can avoid a lot of awkward conversations like that.
Because my poor son hears divorce lawyer and is like, helps people. I'm sure that there are so many people who don't believe that.
Oh man, thank you so much for the question. Let's jump into the next one, and I think this one's for you, Mike.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alex.
Rate is so low. Do you feel interlock devices are helpful or just a money scheme? The driver could have his passenger below for him to start the car.
Right. So, there's a lot of thoughts that come to mind with a question like this. I think maybe it's important to go back and explain a little bit of the history. So, DUIs, driving under the influence offenses, went largely, unprosecuted or under-prosecuted for a very long time, for decades and decades. And so you had a lot of people who go out and they drink too much, they get behind cars, and accidents were caused, fatalities were caused, injuries were caused.
You're making me feel bad taking a sip of the Strongbow.
Well, I'm just saying. So, you went from where there was almost no enforcement, and when something like that happens,
Like in the 70s?
right, like the pendulum's
Bush
going to
got
swing,
one?
and sometimes it doesn't stop dead in the middle, but it keeps going because there's overcorrections happening. So, because there were a lot of tragedies in this country where you had people being killed or severely injured by drunk drivers, and so you have citizens banding together with their own interest groups, like Mothers
MAD.
Against Drunk Driving, MAD. And so, they lobbied very hard, which is their right to do as U.S. citizens, to lobby and petition their government. And they got laws passed all across the country, very strong laws. And some of them were very practical. For instance, well, maybe we mandate that they get a substance abuse evaluation. A lot of people would say, well, it's good to know whether there's an issue there or not. And then there's things like the, like you said, there's the in-car intoxilizers, essentially is what we call them. The ignition interlock devices. And it's essentially what it is. It's a little breathalyzer, intoxilizer, goes in your car, and you blow into it, and then presumably your breath is below 0.02 and your car starts. And so a lot of people...
Oh, wait, so the standard is below 0.02 for you to start your car?
Well, typically,
Lower than
it could be different in different places, but yeah, they want it much lower. They want to make sure you haven't been drinking at all, not that you're below the legal limit. I can tell you in the state of Florida, usually it's 0.02. If it's above that, then it's automatically going to lock down your car and send a signal that will go presumably to your probation officer. So that's very problematic. And so, but a lot of people have criticized that, well, really it's unenforceable because you can have a passenger in your car that continues to just blow into it for you, and how do you enforce that? And the question is, or the answer is, sorry, that's very difficult to do so. So then if you have something...
It's not practical to have someone in
Right.
your car all the time.
Yeah, it's not.
Unless you have a child. skills.
Yeah, and
That
you
would
may or may
really-
not. And that brings up a whole nother set of concerns, about, hey, little Timmy, blow into this real quick. Mommy's had a few and needs to get to the club.
We actually got a question
I
from.
gotta get to work.
Yeah, right, guys. Mommy's had a few and needs to get to work. I like that
And then
better.
you don't turn the car off when you drop them off.
Right? And so,
Smarter.
there's arguments on both sides of the question. I
Just
mean,
kidding, don't-
does society benefit? Maybe. There's arguments on both sides. But I can definitely tell you, the companies that oversee it and actually monitor it, they're benefiting. They're getting paid every single month. And there's really the question of how much good it's doing. I don't have statistics in front of me, so it's hard for me to tell. But there are good arguments on both sides of that question.
But also, I think that that's probably, and this is just my perception, this has no legal validity. This is just me being a person who has ideas. Whatever, this is my platform. Is that maybe we don't need more people in jail, or maybe the people who get these type of devices are the people who they're like, you got caught this one time, and we don't expect that you're the kind of person that is a drinking, driving person, but we need to put restrictions on you because we don't know.
Right.
And this is how we figure it out, because you can't have someone in your car all the time.
Right.
Because how are you going to get, so just imagine, right, the little Timmy blowing in it for you. You get to work, you stop your car. How are you going to get home if you're such an alcoholic that you drink all the time, right?
Well, the other thing to remember is that the modern
have a
ones
coworker
now, you have to
doing
blow into them every 15 minutes.
Really?
So you have to
For
continuously
a whole day?
You have to, as you're driving.
How do you
Sorry.
have
So
enough
no, once the
breath?
car's parked, you're fine.
Oh,
But
like,
and
son of a
it may not
bitch.
always be exactly 15 minutes, but the new ones you have to continuously blow into them. Or not continuously, sorry, the proverb would be continually. Yeah, not continuous, continually blow into them at certain intervals, usually about 15 minutes or so. But I agree with
sense.
that. I mean, there are a lot of provisions that get imposed on people who get DUI convictions where you can look and be like, well, that kind of makes sense for everyone. And then you have ones like this, where like, there's a lot of arguments that maybe this isn't as effective of a deterrence as people thought it was. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
got
we have a question coming in from the live feed.
from the live studio audience.
What stops people from making like a little pump that blows air through it? Is there like a saliva reading or something?
The question
That's a good question.
is what, and if, in case you can't hear it, what stops someone from making a little air pump that could continue? I imagine that the air pressure would be very difficult to replicate.
Well, so
Not
for one
really.
thing, there's volume.
Yeah,
You have to
I'm
blow.
You're
it-
a mechanic, that isn't
Good
fair.
PSI on that one.
So you do, there has to be a certain amount of volume that comes out and things
And a
like
certain
that. There's a
temperature
slope. But honestly, it might be possible someone is a good enough engineer. I think they're betting on the fact that the majority of people aren't secretly like Mythbuster level engineers on their spare time.
I'm sitting here like,
This
I
turned
would
into
make
such
a-
a Mythbuster
I would
episode
make a
that I
little
love
blower.
it.
I mean, I would
I
make a
feel as
little
if we need to
blower.
come back and have a special episode where he
Legal-
tries to bust this myth. I think we need
Legal
to.
Mythbusters.
I think we need to see what
Write it
he
down.
could come up with.
Write it down.
And I think we need to
Legal
come back with legal
Mythbusters.
There's a
Mythbusters.
small fan that blows and you can regulate the
I mean,
pressure
what is
from it.
stopping
You might be able
somebody-
to. You might be able to.
What is stopping somebody like him from making a really good device that could do it and then profiting off it?
See,
The
we're
fact
not.
that
As long
his
as they
wife
market
is a
it.
lawyer.
If they take the Q-tip marketing stance, right? These are not for cleaning your ears. Why the hell does anyone buy Q-tips? They buy them to clean our ears.
What's stopping
I
him?
love
I
them.
think the answer
But
is we don't
they're
know until he
saying
tries
you
it.
they literally on
Is there a
track
law
say,
against
don't
it?
do it for this.
Well,
There's
no,
a law
I-
against-
Tampering with? Could they hit me with like tampering?
So that's
But
the thing.
you're
It's
not
like,
convicted.
let's say we have a friend who's on probation who has one of those, and you think, oh, well, I'll practice on theirs. Yes, you might violate their probation if it does not work. So legally, that could be problematic. But I will tell you, all these people who make this equipment, they're private companies. They're more than happy to sell it. I would almost guarantee you could buy one directly from the manufacturer.
I
and
bet
just
you if
install
we
it.
told them that we would, I bet them, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I bet you if we told them that we would give them a plug, they'd give us one.
Yeah.
That I'm a family law lawyer and a criminal lawyer who want to make a YouTube video about how effective they are.
It's possible. Anything's possible. I do know there are some prominent DUI attorneys who spent the money to purchase breathalyzer equipment. Now, those are the actual stationary ones at the breath test centers that they can learn more about them and be able to, dissect them a little better. The ones in the car, though, I'm not sure because you got to understand, by the time that gets put in, someone's already been convicted of DUI.
Right,
So-
like that's a bad time.
So I
to
don't
start messing with
personally
it.
know of any DUI attorneys who've taken the time to buy one of those and get into it. Doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means I do not personally know of them yet.
It's my loophole brain that's like, I could find.
I think special edition Mythbusters is gonna have to come on this show.
So we
I
actually
think
got a
that we should
comment.
do it.
I think we
comment
should.
from the Facebook, and it's right there. If I get a DUI, can I get that expunged or sealed? How do I do that?
So I want to first say that I
Yes.
understand that this person doesn't have a DUI, right?
Right.
So I know, I may or may not know this person who does not have a DUI, whatever.
Yeah.
But if a DUI, you got a DUI, yes, you can get it expunged. And how do you do that? You do it by calling me or him, because I'm sure you do expungements,
I do.
because they're not that difficult.
But it also depends on the resolution. If you've been convicted of DUI, not only can you not ever get that sealed or expunged.
You can't?
No, but you'll never be able to get anything sealed or expunged in Florida. On Florida law, if you've been convicted of something like DUI, been convicted of that crime, you can't get anything sealed or expunged the rest of your life. However, if let's say that you got arrested for DUI, but then it got dropped or you beat it at trial, well, if it gets dropped, you can apply to have it expunged. If you beat it at trial, you can apply to have it sealed. And same thing, if it gets reduced
What's
to
the
a
difference between expunging and sealed?
so expunged means that the file is literally destroyed. It's gonna be incinerated or shredded. Yes, expunged, expungement, expunction. It's actually destroyed.
Can it be recovered by anyone? Like
Oh,
the
I-
FBI?
Once it's expunged,
or-
it cannot. Now the
What
FBI.
about the Florida bar?
So if you're
Do you
gonna apply,
remember what that was like to go through?
I do. Now if you're gonna apply to something like the Florida bar and you've already had it expunged, I hope you kept your own copies because the government will have followed that court order and actually destroyed those files. You will not be able to say, hey, can I get it from you, from the clerk of court or the state attorney? No, they destroyed them in compliance with the lawful order. You need to keep your own copies of those files. So if you're going to become a lawyer or a doctor or a nurse, that you can present it to the board and show them, yes, I got arrested, but this is how it was resolved. They're going to want to see that.
Well,
But
no,
it-
because that plays a huge part in immigration cases. You
Yeah.
feel like when you're applying, you have to show
you do.
the final judgment
Right.
on the expungement or the sealing.
And the FBI only keeps very limited data, what we call the rap sheet in generic terms. So they'll have that you were arrested and the name of the charge and disposition. That's it. They won't
Yeah.
have the actual police report, which
So
is what
wait.
they normally want.
Is it that what you're telling me that there isn't some major database where you enter someone's name and date of birth and every single thing that's ever existed attached to their name and date of birth is in one place where it can be found?
So,
Does
not with
that
the government.
exist?
Not with the government. So with the government, you have local.
Oh my
yeah.
God.
So most of your records are handled by local clerks of courts who are attached to individual counties. So your records are
But what
county
about
to
if it's
county.
my license?
Right. So the license, the DMV does keep a
Oh
database
wait,
on the
is
state
that
level.
different than the clerk of court?
It is.
So
they-
there isn't one place where you could search a
No.
name and get all of the things that exist in their name.
And for those of
Wait,
you,
that's not a fucking
it's
thing?
not. And for those of you who've been
Listen up.
following, all the legal disputes over whether people who used to be convicted felons can now vote, or once that amendment passed in the last election, this was at the heart of the argument and the heart of the ruling by the federal judge Hinkle from South Florida was that, but wait, you're telling people they need to know whether they're eligible or not, but the state doesn't even know. You don't even have a database. So if you don't know, how is it reasonable to say that they should know? So that was at the heart of it. So statewide, they don't
So
really
a
have
state doesn't have a database, never mind the entire government for all the states of all the places of all time?
So the Florida Department of Law
Your
Enforcement.
permanent record isn't a
Yeah.
fucking thing?
So kind of, yes and no. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement, like the FBI, keeps a general record that shows you were arrested, what the charge was, how it was disposed, but they don't store every document from the case, the police reports,
What about your permanent record from school? Is that in the record?
that was also a big lie that they just got all over our heads. So there were
is no
transcripts
permanent
and
record.
discipline records, and when they would say you're suspended, it's on your permanent record, it really wasn't. At least locally, I do education law here. So your discipline record doesn't actually get sent on to universities unless they request it, and they never request it. It's your transcript. So if you're expelled from school, that's on your transcript, your permanent record. If you got suspended for a week because he said something mean to little Timmy in your class,
So you're telling
you're
me-
fine. They're not going to know about that 99% of the time.
So you're telling me when I sold counterfeit World's Finest chocolates when I was a kid, that's not on my record?
You know, the CIA might know about that. They may have a dossier on you for that.
I have so many clients who
Oh, yeah.
come to me about this idea that like you could just look it up, right?
No.
That things like he lost his license, like he once was arrested in
Right.
Oklahoma, like when he was in school he fondled the girl's breast, so he shouldn't have time sharing 13 years later.
Yeah.
Like
It's so hard to dig that stuff up because you need to know what county and what state
Yeah.
did it happen. Now,
So
license
there's no-
issues are statewide, but criminal
Maybe.
issues, you usually have to go to the county in which it happened if you want to pull actual copies of those
Right,
records,
so
those files.
There's no like gathered permanent record, and I feel like I tell my clients all the time, like,
Right.
if you know where this is, you have to tell me. I
Yeah.
don't just put his name in a database or file this case, and all of a sudden the clerk is like, whoa, he's got a speeding ticket.
Right.
Like, that doesn't just arrive at my desk with some fucking notification. I don't get these pop-up notifications. Your delivery, like
No,
it's
they-
not
they-
like
There have
Amazon.
been multiple times where I've assisted an attorney on a background check and just trying to find a case where I'm literally going county by county.
Oh, yeah.
And mind you, every docket system here in Florida is not the same.
And we, what, 60
None
something
of them are
counties?
the
Is it
same.
67, I
Actually, no,
believe?
they-
Something like that?
67.
Yeah.
There are, so I've seen multiple counties here in Florida that have the same style that Osceola County has with their docket search.
Right, so that
Oh,
was
and
a
it's
private third-party
awful.
company that created it and to market those clerks.
Yeah.
And so you have counties where maybe they don't have the revenue of, let's say, Orange County or Miami-Dade or Jacksonville. And so it's easier for them to just plug and play and buy that. It's, the system's, like you said, it's not very user-friendly, but it's very efficient for them to just say, well, you do it for us,
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So there is no one individual place where there is like this generation of all of the documents and every little bad thing that someone's done. If that's something that you want, what you are absolutely gonna have to do, throw down the money and get a private investigator to do the research. They have certain other databases that other people don't generally have access to. And what they're gonna do is they'll know where to look, where the most efficient resources are to generate that information or to generate, the leads to have them go down a road. If you've ever watched literally any crime documentary ever, you realize that there is just not this unity of information, even though it seems like there would be with this concept of permanent records.
Yeah.
So,
It's all out there somewhere, but it's not all in one place.
Exactly. It's out there somewhere, and it could be found with enough work and effort. And is the juice worth the squeeze?
Right.
All right, so let's go to the next question. All right. We spent a lot of time on that DUI.
It was a good one.
It really was.
Yeah, I
my
found
wife
a great
and I are
thing, though,
getting-
I wanted to say. It's like it's omnipresent, but it's not ubiquitous.
Yeah, but nobody understands what those words
All right, I had to
mean
get
except
that in
us.
there before we moved on. All right, let's move on.
Only you and I know what that means.
Cheers.
The next question is, my wife and I are getting divorced. I have an injunction against her for domestic violence. She wants an alimony because I make more than her. Can I be forced to pay alimony to my abuser?
Ooh, that's a good one. There is a great argument because in family law, we are a court of equity, which is not civil law, which is about righting a wrong, usually with some financial benefit to it. And it's not criminal law. See, you're getting beat on right now.
Yeah. It's all
It's not
about balancing the scales, right? In courts of
Scales.
equity.
scales, right? Scales of justice. That's why I have them here. It's not about, criminal law where you've wronged society. And you have a crime and your penalty will be loss of certain rights that you have, certain constitutional rights, right? Your right to not have to blow into a breathalyzer to drive, or your right to freedom.
Oh, we're doing
or
this from now on. I'm sorry.
Something
I love
else.
this. I love this little format.
So what's worth mentioning is that family law is what's called a court of equity. So again, it's about balancing what's fair under the circumstances. Now, it's not expressly they have more money, so you get money. That's not how it works. So in the circumstance of, an individual is your abuser and you also have the higher financial earning power or ability, that doesn't mean you won't pay anything, but it will go into the equitable analysis of what should be paid, right? Is it fair or equitable or right or righteous that you pay your abuser, right? What was the nature of the abuse? What happened? How much more money did you make? Do you make $2 million a year and they make 30,000 and they one time punched you, in the gut because they found out you were cheating, right? Yeah, would an injunction be entered? Yes, but would it dismiss her from needing perhaps alimony? Probably not. She was mad you cheated. I'm not saying it's right to punch him in the stomach, come to me so we can get you alimony and not
Get
have
out
this
of
question.
jail free card, so to speak. No alimony for you
Right,
now.
but again, equity, right? Scales of justice. You want me to bring them up here? I will. I'm not.
It's all about
I'm not going
punishment or
to.
retribution. It's just about equity and balancing.
Exactly. Criminal law, punishment.
Right.
Civil law, retribution for the wrong that you've experienced. Family law, equity. What's fair? How do we mend a family?
Awesome. Thank you so much for the question. Next one coming up. I hate my parents. I no longer want to be controlled by them. I just turned 17, but I want to get out of the house now. Is there any legal action I can take to basically disown them?
Run away. I'm just kidding. Don't run
So
away.
find a rock and roll band, and then you just kind of travel. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Don't fall that advice.
Almost famous, basically, at that point.
So, I think that at 17, what you should do is grin and bear it. Unless you are capable of, the way that you could disown them or divorce them is that you would have to show that you could unequivocally support yourself. You have a job, you have an apartment, you have a vehicle, that nothing would stand in your way of becoming a self-sufficient adult. So that's the way that you could gain emancipation.
I was going
And
to
that's
ask,
how
is
you
that what we
divorce.
call it? 'Cause I've always heard that term. Is that the official legal term?
It's an emancipation in Florida, right? So
Yeah.
that's where people think that they are divorcing their parents.
Right.
I don't practice that area law, so don't call me.
I would assume, most 17-year-olds if they had a job, would be minimum wage. It might be difficult for them to show that they can fully support themselves. But hey,
Which is
that's
why I
just
don't
my
practice that
thought.
area law
And
because
that's
just a
why
thought.
the number of the Florida bar. So if you want to find an attorney to help you out with that, call the Florida bar, 1-800-342-8011.
Yep.
And that's the attorney referral line. All right, let's jump into the next one. Let me delete that one out of the way so I don't put it up again. And boom. What are the key components to writing the case statement of a divorce mediation summary?
the key components are getting an attorney.
I literally, when I read this, like, this guy literally just wants the entire.
Right, that it is. What are the key components to writing the statement of a divorce? So in a mediation summary, you actually don't have to write one of those. It can be helpful to the mediators, but some mediators don't read them. So one of the key components is maybe knowing your mediator. Are they the kind of mediator who wants this, has requested it, or needed it? I generally don't write them. It's added time that my client doesn't need to be charged for, and I don't think it's an efficient way when I'm going to have the opportunity to present an opening. Typically, part of my habit in representing clients before we go to mediation is I have a pre-mediation meeting, and I fill out a form that's internal, no one ever sees it, of all of the things to think about, because your goal in mediation is to try to find a way to come to settlement, right? So it's to, like, I want to push and pull you to the brink of your acceptability and what you're willing to accept as a settlement to help you keep control of the outcome of your case, right? So what I do is I fill out a form, we go over it, I ask you all the questions, I make you very uncomfortable, I try to figure out what your limits are, what does your bracket look like, so that I can effectively advocate for you and understand it. Also, I know in mediation that things alter and change, and once we hear the position of the other party, because you don't get to see that mediation summary, it ends up being a confidential communication. I want to hear what they have to say, what their offers are, if they're willing to accept our offers, what that looks like. I don't typically spend the time to prepare such a document. I don't think it's a useful opportunity for my client in my hourly rate. At $300 an hour, if it takes me an hour to an hour and a half to review your whole file, meet with you, and this and that, do you really want to pay that fee for me to write a summary that the mediator may or may not read? No. Even if they kind of ask for one, I don't usually do it. I send the petition. This is the summary of my case. But if you really need to prepare one, mirror your petition and add some facts.
Yeah, it kind of seems like it's your opening statement just written down, essentially, right?
So why would I give it to
And
them?
that's the thing. So mediators and judges, I mean, they can ignore anything in writing fairly easily, but when you're speaking it to them, it makes it a lot harder.
Yeah,
so
well,
it's
I
just
will know if they're like,
yeah, it's a more effective form of communication. I
right,
can see
if they're
that.
swiping on Tinder, right?
Yeah.
Also, I'm going to add a lot of inflection and emphasis, and if they're not paying attention, I'm going to do one of these. You know that thing that your teacher did, that one very effective teacher where they did this? Hold on.
The stare.
Are you ready now?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll continue, right? If I see that they're not paying attention, I'll make everybody uncomfortable and make them pay attention to me. It's what I do. So I don't usually, don't act like it's not true. He's laughing because it's true. I'll make everyone uncomfortable. I'm not afraid of that. I got accused of being a bully today. Golly gee.
What did I miss?
What did you miss? A regular day.
I know.
So, again, you don't have to do that. I don't recommend it. I do recommend you putting together your own bullet points and being kind, assertive, and articulate in your opening once you go to mediation, or call me and I'll do it for you.
There you go. Thank you so much for the question. Next one I think is for you, Michael.
Do you guys do mediations in criminal?
Not in criminal, no, but on my civil side, the personal injury and the homeowners insurance claims, we do mediation.
How does that go?
Criminal mediation is
Do you
kind of,
prepare a summary? Do you do that? Like, what's your style?
yeah, sometimes I do, especially my personal injury cases. I like to prepare like a nice little packet and kind of break everything down.
And
I find it's a little more effective because they're not actually maybe as apt to listen to you. Like sometimes they can write you off. Like having it in writing, sometimes they will actually go through it in these cases because it's different. The stakes aren't equity, and let's balance the scales. The stakes are it's a business decision. They got to actually, if I lay out the numbers and they can see in writing that it is a good business decision for them to settle with me, and I've really taken the time to lay it out, then there's a much better chance that they might.
That sounds to me like you're sending that packet to the other side.
Yeah, sometimes I do. So for the mediator, usually I'm not. Like that's what I'm saying. I'll form a packet for the other side to really break it down.
So not for the mediator.
Right, not for the mediator. For the mediator, I'm not really preparing anything like that. Yeah.
Right, it's not useful, right? The mediator doesn't care. Are they preparing?
Yeah, they're probably not going to read it, and if they do, it's a scan in the 5 minutes before you guys walk in the room, or they walk in the room.
Forgive me.
I want to apologize really quickly. I kind of cut you off. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get
Yeah, because I was like, did I read the question?
Well, now you have to reread it, because now I forget the question.
Yeah, I just have a stroke. Did I read the question or not? My boyfriend was arrested, not mine, but just reading the question.
Yours.
No.
This is a good guy.
Yeah, no, I love him to death. My boyfriend was arrested for domestic violence battery when our neighbor called the police after hearing us argue. He never hit me. What can I do to help us get the charges dropped? Ooh.
So that's one thing about domestic violence. It's kind of like its own little area where the rules just are a little different. So, for instance, it's not written down in policies anywhere, but a lot of times if the police show up for domestic violence calls, someone's going to jail. It's just a matter of who. And so you get a lot of cases where there actually wasn't any domestic violence. I see it all the time where it's, especially if people live like in, let's say, duplex or apartment, there's thin walls, you get in an argument, as couples do. Couples get mad, they yell at each other. That is not a crime. If I got mad with my wife, we yelled back and forth a little bit, that's fine. However, sometimes you have neighbors who hear the yelling and think, well, gee, maybe there's something bad going on over there. Maybe I need to call police. A lot of times I'm sure they're acting in the best, in what they think is the best interest. They're not trying to cause undue problems.
Nice.
So they call the police, they show up to your door. You guys have already made up. I mean, you had your argument, like you've eaten dinner.
Y'all are hopping out of bed.
Right, you're Netflix and chilling, the cops show up right there to arrest someone. So that can be problematic. So, a lot of times they show up, like I said, someone's going to go, what can you do? Well, step number one is, find a good attorney, because there are things that can be done. One of them is that, the attorney can prepare something called declination of prosecution affidavit. It's essentially a statement that can be filled out saying how you feel about it. Hey, I'm an adult who's thinking clearly, and I'm related to this person this way. My boyfriend, my husband, my wife, my girlfriend, doesn't matter. I'm not afraid of them. This never happened. This is a big mistake. Please don't press charges. Now, is that legally binding? No, but it does officially put the other side on notice that maybe this is one big mistake, and it's a good way because once you file it, it's not just like a private communication where the defense attorney emails the prosecutor saying, hey, I think this is a mistake. I mean, you file that. It's part of the case file. It makes it much harder to ignore. So the first step is find a good lawyer and then have that lawyer maybe draft something for you where you can formally put them on notice that this is a big mistake. And it does help get the charges drop, but it does not guarantee it.
No, we used to, the way we would do it is we would file it, and then I would walk my happy little self to the state attorney's office and hand them the physical copy. So I'm like, hey,
right, follow-up is very important.
Real petty.
Yeah.
Real petty.
Filing it does not do enough. You need to follow up. Usually, at a minimum, email them a courtesy copy and be like, hey, we're going to talk to you about this. Call me when you can. But then, just in case they don't call you, summarize your arguments in that email as well, because that may be the only communication
so a summary
you get.
of your argument letter is good in this instance.
Yes, I do all the time. Call me and we can discuss. But just in case you don't call me, here are my thoughts, and attach this a declination. And 9 times out of 10, I don't get the phone call, but you will get a notice that the case has been dropped
Yeah.
if that's the decision they make.
Yeah.
That sounds like a really sticky situation from the caller's end, though. Like,
Yeah.
it's like as you said, you believe they're doing.
Should you throw an
the
orange
best
through their
thing.
window?
No. But it almost
Right.
reminds me of like the Kitty Genovese effect. Like the reason 911 was invented is because nobody called, even though she was suffering for hours. And it's like morality, right? Like,
Right.
is there anything to protect like people, or in that sense, like advise people, like, all right, here's a yes and no.
And that's what's hard. There is no clear-cut yes and no. I
Yeah,
mean,
people are.
anyone can call 911 at any time that the wind possesses them. We do have laws. You're only supposed to call 911. There's a real emergency, and false reports can be prosecuted. But if you have a neighbor who hears loud arguing and they genuinely
Yeah.
believe that, I'm putting in this call to actually help and save someone, I mean, the system is not set up to really
Weed that out.
I mean, the only way to weed out is by sending out an officer and having them investigate and then determine what happened. The problem is there's a lot of societal pressures to where if an officer goes and then they think, oh, there's a fairly decent explanation for why I shouldn't arrest anyone, there wasn't domestic violence, and they leave, and then there really was a domestic abuser. It turns out
Genevieve
severely,
dies.
it hurts or kills someone. Then it's on him, right? And so a lot of times there's a lot of just societal pressure, not necessarily systemic. It's just, they're feeling that pressure, like, well, I'm not sure. Like, who do I believe? I mean, maybe, because a lot of times people will, there may be actual violence, but then you have people who will deny it, and
to
so
that point.
how does that officer know whether violence happened and that person's denying it for some other reason, or whether it didn't happen? I mean, it's a very sticky situation, very difficult situation for those officers, which, it can lead to people being falsely arrested. If that happens, very important you call an attorney right away.
So, like, the victimology behind it, I want to speak to that because this comes up in my practice a lot, is the other side of it, the victim of it, right? In knowing pretty well about victimology, a lot of times the police come, and because fucking Joey beat my ass, he's standing back, that's his last name, he beat my ass.
Yeah.
He's standing behind me, and the
Right.
police officer's like, did he really hit you?
Right.
And, she's standing there, and he can hear her, and she's like,
Right.
no, because
They're
because
afraid.
he can hear her, and
Right.
and she knows that if the police officer is like, well, it wasn't that hard of a hit, right? You'll be fine.
Yeah.
As soon as he leaves, she's gonna
Yeah.
die.
And
Like,
that's
death
what I'm saying.
is next.
There are very, very real, very practical
That's why it
reasons why those arrests happen. I'm not saying, that there's
it's
not
both.
any reason for it
It's
to
both.
happen. It's both. People are getting falsely arrested, but there are, when you look at it, there are very real reasons why that's happening. It's hard. These officers are asked to make a split-second decision, based on what two people are telling them. And it's hard,
And they're not
like,
psychologists.
they're
they
not.
don't know victimology. They don't have a psychology
No.
degree. This is impossible
I've
for them.
had multiple times.
Now they fuck up all the time. Don't worry. I'm on side police fuck up a lot. I also want to mention that this is the exact profession. It's our job to literally call out the police and go, you fucked up, and we're calling you out. It's literally an attorney's job. That is what they do in court. They go, the police and the state got it fucking wrong. That's
Yeah.
what we do. That is what he does. He protects your constitutional right on that. He is team.
That's
The
it.
police fuck up so often. I'm gonna make a whole career out of it. I'm serious. So that is. What
I've never
we do.
worded it that way, but
But it's
that's
the truth. It's what you're doing.
I mean, that is our job, is to say, yeah, the state of Florida, which usually refers to the police, made a mistake, and because of that mistake, my client should not be found guilty. I mean,
That
that's
is
not
what
always
you
the
do.
case, because there are also very many cases where it's like, hey, a crime just never occurred, But even in that case, it's kind of assumed in that, because
It's
presumably the
yeah.
person got arrested. So I'm saying the crime never occurred. They were arrested. That mistake was made. We need to
The
right it
police
here.
got it wrong. So the
Yeah.
police getting it wrong, the remedy is getting an attorney, and that's what we do.
Yes.
We stand for the fact and the knowledge that the police get it wrong on
They're
such
only
a-
human. They're going to make mistakes like anyone else, and our job is to point that out. I
and
mean,
it happens so often. We have very good careers over it.
So there really is no better safe than sorry aspect to any of it.
I feel like I want
call a
to.
lawyer.
I
You
want to
can't
pull out
prevent
my
the
little,
arrest.
it
Yeah.
depends.
Yeah, you cannot prevent that arrest. I mean, most
How
of the
about not
time.
be an asshole? Don't raise your voice.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Inside voices, I guess.
Right.
But-
When
Yeah,
someone
yeah,
else-
that's
or-
Right.
appropriate.
If it happens, call a lawyer. That's
Don't
the
be
main
stupid,
takeaway.
stupid.
Right.
All right, thank you so much. So let's zip through these questions because I do have some stories and some memes I want to show
Oh
you
yeah,
guys.
the reaction.
Exactly. So let's zip through this. Michael, 30 seconds or less.
Yes.
All right. My traffic hearing has been postponed due to COVID. Do I risk my license being suspended for the hearing being delayed?
So if the hearing's delayed due to no fault of your own, your license should be suspended for like non-payment. You know, they give you timelines, like pick an election within
be?
30 days. Should not be.
Oh.
You know, pick an election and you have all these things to do. If the court is rolling it or continuing it, that shouldn't necessarily affect you. Now, if your court date is because my license was already suspended, then yeah, you need to look into those underlying facts. But if it's something like I ran a stop sign or I was speeding, the fact that the court rolls it is not going to cause your license to become suspended.
Okay, good. That was
Asking for a friend.
Thank you so much for the for that question. Second one, Erin, you ready?
Yeah.
My mom passed away a few months ago and was receiving alimony. Should her ex still owe the arrears awarded to her estate?
No.
Thank you.
That was quick, much quicker than mine.
That's it. You don't need to know.
All right, last one coming up. Michael, if I have a medical marijuana card, can I be arrested for smoking while I drive?
Yes. So even if you're legally prescribed medication, whether it's medical marijuana or something, let's say like oxycodone or something, just because you're legally prescribed it doesn't mean you can drive on it. So whether you're driving down the street while you are intoxicated by alcohol or legally prescribed medications like marijuana or oxycodone, yes, if you're driving on it and you're under the influence of it and it's impairing your normal faculties, you can be arrested for driving under the influence, 100%.
Am I prescribed alcohol because I have Irish heritage?
There you go. Me too, right?
I'm pulling the Mexican card on that one on my card.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
It's not all a Jameson, officer. It's my medicine.
So let me edit this real quick. As we are about to, we thank you everyone for all the questions that we received from the Facebook, the text message, also emails. We thank everyone for their time and their amazing questions.
I want to mention really quickly, we got a message from the texting service, only because it's funny. That was hashtag mind your fucking business. I thought you'd all enjoy that.
All right, so I have a meme for you guys. Okay,
let's see it.
Also, I want to mention the texting service goes right to my watch, and I will have the opportunity to read your message as we speak to our main phone number. So be sure next week or whenever you have a question, you feel free to message us because I get it right here.
All right, let me put the volume up over here so you guys
Thank
can
you,
hear it.
technology.
So let's do this.
Oh, no.
Did you know that there's a trick to the sun visor in the car? No. Okay, so your dad and I watched TikTok last night, and there's this lady that blew my mind about a little trick with
Why is her hair like
the sun
that?
visor.
Wow, hairspray.
Okay, so you pull this down, okay, and this is really disgusting. But see this little arrow, the arrow pointers down. Okay, pull it out. Now, if the sun's bothering you over here, you can't do nothing about it, right? You wish it would pull out. Oh my God. I know! Look at that! I didn't know that. I'm gonna be 35 years old. I never knew this. All vehicles do this every right?
I thought she was going to like smack her with it.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be something funny.
I was like, did you know about that?
No, so new
I
cars,
did.
yeah. So I can tell you that was not always the fact. That's only in newer cars. So I recently bought a new car. I'm like, oh yeah, it does this trick. Nice, because I'm one of those guys who drives cars till they fall apart. So up until like 9 months ago, I was driving this old beat up Mazda. It was like 10 years old, and I can guarantee you it did not do that.
So we have a resident mechanic,
There we go.
friend of ours here. It's just a friend. I'm just kidding, it's my husband. He went, ooh, I just got friend zoned. And he said only newer cars do that. So we were fortunate that we have an expert on it. I did know that vehicles do this because I am short and the sun gets in my eyes and it really bothers me and I'm easily irritated. So I'm like, oh, nice. I learned that a very long time ago.
The second I saw this video on TikTok, I was like, I went running to my car.
Did it work?
Yeah, it worked. I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. I had no idea.
Patricio, we need to get you out more.
Yeah, go get in a car in like the early 2000s or before, and it's not gonna do that.
That there's an arrow
I do know that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah,
That's what
my also,
Yeah.
I had a stepdad for a time that used to repair cars, so not fair. I'm at an unfair advantage.
Ooh.
And I married a mechanic, so
So the story that I'm gonna put up, we saw this earlier this week, and we were like, we gotta attack, we gotta put it out there right now, and I want to get your opinion on this story, okay? And it's gonna come up on the screen right now.
so Erin, shut the fuck up.
In regards to Aramis Ayala, we're releasing the list of questionable police officers throughout the Central Florida area. What are your thoughts on that?
So I have very conflicted opinions on it. On one aspect, if they know that there are certain problem officers, and then they have a duty to inform the defense attorneys about that because of the Brady case that they cite.
Wait, a duty to inform who?
So the defendants, the defense attorneys, so
Okay,
inform the other
so-
side.
Does that equal a public filing of it?
So here's the thing though, so if the list exists, then we should have the right to maybe see the whole list. What they were doing before is, well, we'll let you know. If an officer's on your case, we'll let you know if they're on the list. But at the same time, that's the defense bar having to say, well, we put so much trust in you, you're gonna remember every time, you're never gonna forget. Maybe we deserve to have the list so we can review it ourselves. In which case, you had defense attorneys putting in public records requests, which were denied. Now, if they were to grant it to us, that's the same as her publishing it with Orlando Sentinel or anyone, because that attorney is any defense attorney is gonna turn around and show everyone else, and it would have been published. But so that's one concern I have, is that people have a right to know. On the other aspect, I'm very concerned about the due process that goes into people being placed on that list. So for all we know, some of those officers were accused of wrongdoing, but were they ever actually shown to have committed any wrongdoing? I can tell you, I can't go into too much detail, but there's at least one person on that list that I personally know was never convicted of a crime, was never shown to have done anything improper. There was an accusation that we were able to show, was not accurate, and I don't think that person deserves to be on that list. So I'm very conflicted about it. I think it's very important that if that information exists, the defense bar deserves to have it, but there should be some checks and balances. I mean, they should be able to put in anyone that they believe. There should be some sort of due process. And we don't know enough about the process, the decision-making process that determines who gets on that list. And so as someone who's made a career of protecting people's constitutional rights, that's very concerning to me, because police officers are citizens too.
Do
They have rights just like everyone else does, yes. So are their rights being violated by maybe putting on that list without due process? So I think this is a very interesting issue that needs to be analyzed more. It's something I thought about maybe really digging into and maybe writing an article on. I haven't done it yet.
I
but-
am so, I feel like I have so many questions that I almost don't even know where to start, right? Did
Mhm.
you,
As a public servant, does your work career entitle you to a private, is there a constitutional right that protects that?
like your
It-
private reputation?
So yes and no.
But it's their work reputation that was put out there.
Right, now, if they were to move to,
Well, that's my thought.
North
If they're still a
Carolina, are they
public
now not
servant,
gonna be employable as a police officer there, because they're on this list?
Right. And so that's always a concern as well. And I think that gets back to what's the process for getting them on there. Now, let's
How do you get
say
'em on?
let's say you have Officer John Smith. John Smith's accused of a crime. He goes to trial. He loses. He's convicted. Should that person be on the list? Absolutely. I mean, you had your day in court. What about the person who said John Smith? We have Jane Doe, and Jane Doe is accused of a crime, but they never proved her guilty in a court of law. It was never conclusive. In fact, a lot of the evidence points to the fact that it never happened. Should that person be on the list?
No.
That's the big question. And so, what's the process? Who's deciding this? And since the process isn't public, it's problematic that the information is public without the process being public. I want to see all of it. There's no halfway measures here, I don't think. I think if we're going to make their names public, then the entire process should probably be public, I mean, we have very strict sunshine laws when it comes to governmental, meetings, public meetings of like a county
Also,
commission or something like
yeah.
that. But maybe something like that should apply. Like, listen, publicize it. Trials are public. Governmental meetings are public. But this is done behind closed doors. That's very problematic to me.
Yeah, and the other concern I have is, for example, I know of an individual who was a police officer, not a full-time police officer, more part-time, whose wife was angry about the exceedingly good result I got them in court. And she literally told him, if you don't go tell your lawyer that you don't want 50% custody, also there's no custody in Florida, it was shared parental responsibility, and that's how it works. Ma'am, you don't want custody, and you don't want the money I have to now pay you and the money you got from equitable distribution, because he did get a higher amount of equitable distribution because she had a very good career, high-paying career. So he was a lower income earner.
But probably provide all the benefits for the family. They
He
have great
provided
benefits.
the benefits, but he also had more time for their 4 children, right?
Yeah.
So this was an exceedingly beneficial arrangement for both parties. Her career could soar because he was available, and she provided benefits, and you know, just it was a good union. They were a good couple. There isn't domestic. Yeah, they grow apart, right?
Yeah,
4
things
children.
happen.
Shit happens, right? So, but she was angry. She was angry she had to pay him. She was angry he got the money. She was angry your bitch lawyer fucking did this. Your
Is that
bitch
you?
your bitch lawyer bullied my lawyer. Your bitch lawyer knew the mediator better. Whatever they want to say.
Say the rules of evidence.
You
know?
were sleeping with her. Whatever. That comes
like
up a lot.
Bitch attorney.
Yeah. So, you know, what ended up happening was she was like, if you don't tell your lawyer to retract it because I can't get my lawyer to fight it,
then I will. I'm guessing make an accusation.
I will make an accusation that you're violent to me and you're violent to the children. She made the accusation. It fell apart because it was so baseless, because this person, I swear to God, I call him Mr. Incredible. That's his nickname in our office. First of all, because he looks like Mr. Incredible, and because he honestly has this personality, right? Kindness, righteousness. He is such a good person. I really had to. He actually was entitled to more than he got, in my humble
And that's
opinion.
what's concerning. What if one false accusation or allegation like that wound him up on the list? Like I think as a society,
my heart aches for him.
Yes,
He's
I
fighting
mean,
it still.
you know, do officers who actually commit bad deeds or who are dishonest, do we need to know about that? Yes, we do. However, do we need some checks and balances that good officers who should not be on that list, you know, maybe don't end up there? Maybe, you know, let us know what the process is, let the public see it, maybe have very strict guidelines that must be followed. You know, right now it kind of seems as if it was a whim. Well, we've decided these are the officers and you need to trust that. Well, what's the process? Well, we're not showing that to you. Very concerning. As someone who literally makes his career defending people's constitutional rights, I feel
Calling out the police and the government for getting it wrong.
Right,
Often.
and it's
This
the same
is an
thing.
example.
So it's the same thing. Like, you know, someone who makes their career defending people's constitutional rights, I'm very concerned that some of those officers may be having their constitutional rights not fully respected. And the fact that.
But I'm sorry, if you are an officer of the law and you have that badge and you have the authority to enforce the law, aren't you supposed to be held at a higher standard because of said responsibility?
Well, maybe yes and no. So, for instance, there are certain constitutional rights that have been found by, you know, Supreme Court precedent to be relaxed. For instance, if you're a government worker, police officer, or, you know, maybe, you know, the guy in sanitation, doesn't matter, you've restricted First Amendment rights. So, for instance, if you were to go post a bunch of stuff on social media, you know, they could actually come back and say, well, that's not in line with, you know, what we think is professional, and we're going to let you go for that. Whereas maybe if you're in private practice, you know, you could claim First Amendment, maybe get away with a little more. So, for instance, you do have certain rights that are restricted, but you don't give up your basic constitutional rights to due process. No one gives that up. No one. I don't care whether you're a police officer, a civilian, whether you're a politician. Everyone has the right to due process, and that's what's concerning me here. It's not maybe some rights that get retracted a little bit or diminished, like First Amendment rights, so you can't say wherever you want because it reflects on the government you serve. But I'm talking about basic due process. Everyone gets that. You don't check that at the door because you decide to be a police officer.
Basic due processes and checks and balances on police officers. I'll tell you something that I see all the effing time, and I know he has a question, but I got to throw this one out here. I will be at a red light, all right, and I see a cop cruiser just coming up. There's nothing in the area, but it's a red light. As he's slowly pulling up, I see him turn on his what are they called?
The lights.
The lights.
His blues.
Just so he can get past. And I watch it happen, and then a block down, he's turning them off. Isn't that abuse of power in a sense?
So maybe, because a lot of people assume they're doing it to get to the light, but what happens sometimes in real life, and it makes it hard to distinguish between the officer's abusing power and the other one who had a real emergency, is sometimes you get a call, hey, there's a call at the corner of First and Main Street. Get there right away. It's an emergency. You pawn your blues, you blow through the light, and then they come back and say, never mind, so-and-so's already there. Never mind, it wasn't an emergency or something like that. And then they flick them off and they go on their way. So sometimes it's legitimate.
Here in Orlando, 'cause I see that multiple
So
times.
wait,
I'm just saying it's hard to
before-
distinguish, and
Before
both
we
do
get too
happen.
far, away from my story, I want to mention that my client, I think that why this, he's still fighting this, right? And on the family law side, they have had no movement. You're welcome. But he's a black man. Wife is a white woman who makes money. So from all of the outset looking in, and perhaps from the criminal law side, that they might be taking this further than I believe it needed to go, are we having a race analysis? And what kind of race scales of justice are we having with a black man and a police officer and then domestic violence? I just want to exclaim my anger for that.
It's important that falls under statistic in this country.
It does.
Questions from the crowd?
You are waving at us so much.
The lights don't change. The cops turning on their lights do not change the turn signals or the signals. They have to actually flip a switch inside their car.
No,
That's a transponder that is recorded because, like, I have friends that are mechanics on ambulances.
Wait, so it's recorded once they flip the light?
It's not their lights that signal it. There's actual
He's
transponders.
talking about actually signaling a red to go to
we're not
green.
talking about the lights.
But sometimes they put on their lights just to go through the red
That's what
without
we're saying.
triggering the
Okay.
transponder.
Okay, so sometimes they do that, but I thought he was saying that they turn their lights on to change it.
Oh,
They
yes.
don't change the light.
No, they don't
using
change the light. They
lights.
drive through a red.
Right.
Yeah.
But
So
And
what
that's
my
how I
question
understood
was-
that. That's how I thought was
Me
That
right.
was
too.
my comment, was that
Right.
there's actually a transponder that keeps a record
So
of who activated the lights because it actually goes into a database.
well, my question is when I was growing up, this is one of those like old wives' tales.
You can't flip your lights and change the lights.
That was my question when I was
And
growing
those
up. All
lights-
my
and-
friends.
But you can blow at it like that Whoopi Goldberg movie. And they blow some red to green. I don't know if you guys remember that from
No, I
your
don't.
kids.
That's on
I
mine.
don't remember the name of the movie, but
I always do that, the old Jedi mind trick where I'm just looking at the light and I do this number. And there have been very few times where it's actually made.
like cloud bursting, and they stare at ghosts. Yeah. You stare long enough, the cloud will burst.
Your Jedi mind tricks won't work on me.
Right there. Thank you so much. All right, so you guys ready for some meme time?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Let me pull it up right here.
Joe.
Pass it along. We'll.
What happened?
He'll put it up.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
All right,
You could go on
so
YouTube and make a comment.
today's memes are brought to you by Alex, and I'm going to have Alex introduce the first one. Yeah.
You didn't prompt me.
Oh, my apologies.
This
Okay.
is fucking bullshit. That's.
How so?
I don't know. I just would like to put "this is fucking bullshit" right on that and use it as a
Everything
meme for
that I just
myself.
said is bullshit.
Right. That
Too
like,
much tennis,
like
not
my
enough hugs.
defense. My defense in a case. This guy's fucking lying. Right.
Oh, then in that case, wouldn't that be like the Chewbacca defense?
The Chewbacca defense. Look over here. We got Chewbacca living on planet Endor with a bunch of Ewoks. It makes no sense. If it makes no sense, you must have
It's a
quit.
quit.
Classic.
Oh, no, yeah, it's
I don't
South
get
Park
it.
referencing Star Wars, but it's
Like we need to use
The
this meme
caption for
somehow.
this would be exactly when Judge Pettit hits him with a fucking hardball.
Yeah.
And people don't like the order, and this is the defense.
I love it.
Oh no,
Too much tennis, not enough hugs. That's funny.
You guys ready for the next one?
yeah. The reason Batman doesn't cover his whole face is because he needs the police to know.
Next!
Oh.
I don't know. You know, so I have a perspective on it, and I feel like it is not my place to speak about it. It's my place to listen. I feel like right now that's my job. It's
Yeah,
my place to
I-
listen and hear and be there for
It is. You know, at the end of the day,
Listen.
we all know there are issues, long-standing pervasive issues in this country dealing with race and law enforcement. And, you know, and like you said, I mean, it's everyone has an opinion on it. It's, you know, trying to be a good ally is it's very difficult these days.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, you want to do what you can to try to help the situation without doing so much that you actually make it worse. I mean, it raises,
try to
just
privately-
reading this, we can laugh, but it raises a bunch of serious issues in society that do
true.
need to be
But
addressed.
I just want to clarify. He just asked me to send him to me, and I sent him the first 7. And I
So my perspective on it is to be the change I want to see in the world, and to, without loudly publicly going, look how great I am, do the right thing.
No, I totally
Always
understand.
been my perspective, and what I think I am obligated to do
At the
is the
very
right
least,
thing, whether
yeah.
someone is looking or
And
not.
I'm saying at the very least, that's what everyone should
Even
do
if that
in this world,
means
is wake up every day and
getting
strive to
called
do
a
the right
bully.
thing, you know, and every moment. I mean, that's really, if you think about what life is, it's just a very long series of very specific individual choices. And the accumulation, the summation of those choices, you know, what that equals is who you are as a person. So every day when you wake up, I mean, it's very important to try to do the right thing in every single situation that you're confronted with.
Right now.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I'm so. No.
The Gregorian chant really brings it home.
I don't know if you're Catholic, but that comes up.
I actually am Catholic. Yeah. Irish Catholic here.
Same!
Yeah.
And then our last meme right
My confirmation name's
So,
Patrick.
Yeah. Mine
So-
was Elizabeth.
There you go.
Here's our last meme. It is a hearing aid center.
I can't read that.
Oh, let me blow it up.
These tired eyes of
Huh?
staring.
Question mark.
Is it?
Huh? Question mark. Help. Help and hear
No.
something. No, that I
Let me
can't quite read
blow
it.
it up. I'm so sorry that this is.
That we're blind?
Help you.
Enhance. Enhance. Enhance.
Enhance.
All right, help you hear. Hearing aid center.
We
Huh?
obviously need a what? Help you see. Seeing center.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, we lost it right
That's
there.
actually a pretty brilliant name for a hearing aid.
Yeah, right.
center.
Oh man.
Um,
Michael Barber, thank you so much.
So glad you were here.
For
Well,
coming
thanks
on.
for having me, guys. I really enjoyed this and really appreciate you guys having me on.
So it's a fun way for us to, connect as
It
colleagues.
is, you know. And
Much more fun than
and
like,
what-
let's just go to happy hour.
It is, and you know, as lawyers, we have such serious jobs. When we check in the morning, all day, we are literally dealing with people's emergencies, their life crises, the worst
they're
things
real.
they've ever
They're
dealt with,
real.
and we deal with that all day long, every single day, day in and day out. When you own your own firm, a lot of times it's 7 days a week. It never ends because you have to be available. And so to be able to come on here and kind of talk about some of these things, a more relaxed environment, cut loose a little bit, it's a very welcome change of pace.
I'm really glad.
And I think necessary for our mental health, for
I
people
do,
like
I
us.
do. Like, we need to enjoy
Yeah.
it and be a part of it and let it be
Right.
a positive
We need to be able to
thing.
talk about these legal issues without getting so worked up we're having an aneurysm every time, because that's how it feels like a lot of times. We're always on the brink of that meltdown because of how much we take on.
And to speak on that, and I think a lot of people like to dismiss this part of us, but I think that we should always use our platforms for good, right?
Absolutely.
It's a big
With
picture.
great power comes great responsibility.
Yes, Batman.
I'm
I
not
love
ready
it.
to be
No,
super
no,
Spider-Man.
no,
Spider-Man! Oh, no! Sorry, you're
My
right.
point-
I
We're
got it
big
wrong.
superhero fans
5
around
points
here.
off Barber on that.
Sorry about that. Oh, man. I went DC when it was clearly Marvel.
But
That was
So
Uncle
I
Ben.
think that I want to get back to my little soapbox.
Yes.
'Cause this is no, that our mental health, we don't do a good enough job. That's you and I and our staff too. I really, it's important that our staff is included in this. We don't do a good job at making the concerted effort to take care of our mental health. If that's like laughing and enjoying some time with a friend, if that's unplugging, if that's making your work week not be 7 days a week on the weeks that you need it, or if that's letting a deadline, that your client demands of you, but that the law isn't, he's going to have no adverse
And it's
consequences.
just not
for it.
feasible.
It's not feasible, right?
Right.
Because you can't pour from an empty cup. So
Right.
I hope that whenever you feel like you need a break or need some time or whatever, that you reach out to me, and I will always open up my liquor cabinet, and you could come by here and laugh with
Absolutely.
Patricia or any of us. You could come by unannounced. That I truly mean that we always have a stocked fridge with snacks and liquor and water, and even go squeeze if you would like to be more healthy.
Nice. I like it.
So,
So where do I sign up?
Yeah.
You know?
You're in. You're
I'm
in.
in.
You just show up, you're like, I need a snack and
I
a
like
laugh,
it.
and we got you.
I need a snack and some liquor, please. I'm
Yeah.
having a hard day.
Stop on by. We're right on Orange Ave.
Oh.
So,
That's why you have the orange.
Michael, go ahead. Oh, sorry. Michael, go ahead and plug your firm.
Yes, please.
So
do.
I'm Michael Barber. My law firm is very creatively titled The Law Office of Michael D. Barber. The D had to be thrown in there because it's Michael J. Barber, next county
You
over.
were-
So Michael D. Barber.
Yes,
who is
Michael
Barber.
D.
always
The
have to
D.
know
The
the
D
D.
is for danger. So you can call me at
Always extra D
Right?
in this room.
you can call me at 407-890-8000. That's 890-8000, or you can
Put
find
that
my
up there.
Oh, it is.
right. You can
The
find
phone
my
number?
website,
Oh, love it.
which is devotedtojustice.com, which is not a catchy URL. It's really our belief that we try to strive to meet that every single day. We really try to devote ourselves to obtaining justice for all our clients. And please feel free to reach out. You can also email me at mbarber, M as in Michael, barber at devotedtojustice.com.
But don't do it on the weekends and nights because he deserves a break as well. He cannot pour from an empty cup.
But if it's between that or going with another attorney, hit me up. I'm always there for you.
He'll respond. He got you.
I
He
always
is.
will.
His spouse would be like, "Put that."
She's a lawyer too. She knows. She respects the fact that
good for
it's
you.
a 24/7 hustle.
It is. It is.
Yeah,
He
she
gets
gets it.
That's my husband going, I get it. It's a 24/7. It is. It is.
But sometimes you gotta be like,
Yeah. Sometimes it has to be family time.
It does.
But as always, we want to thank, once again, we'll thank Michael Barber for coming on the show, giving us some great knowledge, great facts, and of course, Erin Morse for, of course, throwing some beautiful knowledge and some beautiful facts out there as well. We thank all our listeners, all our followers that sent the questions through Facebook, texting service, and the email. And we will be back next week at same time, same place. So we'll see you guys next week.
I also want to thank Connor for dancing
Take
in the
care,
background
everyone.
over there.